You're watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to another episode of Nostalgic Gaming Stories. Today's episode, I'm joined by our special guest, Rabid Waffles, and today we're going to be talking about gaming firsts. So I'll go ahead and start us off, but the first thing we're going to talk about is the first game we ever played. So first off, the first game I ever played was Wolfenstein 3D, and that was a game I played on a floppy disk on an old Windows DOS computer. And I've played it a little bit on the channel before. It's one of the first-person shooters. It's not technically the first. I often credit it as the first, but it's actually just the first traditional first-person shooter. But there were ones that predate it, even ones from the creators of Wolfenstein that were made before Wolfenstein itself. It's, and obviously, when you're watching this, you'll be seeing gameplay of Wolfenstein 3D on the screen as I'm talking. You know, it's a great game. It's one of those classic shooters. It's very similar to things like Doom and Duke Nukem. But I played it all the time as a kid, and I only referred to it as the shooting game, because I didn't know what it was called. And I was only 5 years old when I first played it. But that was my first game. How about yours?
Well, my first game was also violent. The first game I remember ever playing was for the PS2. It was Resident Evil 2. I don't remember what its exact name was. I just remember it being the second Resident Evil game.
I think it is just called Resident Evil 2.
I remember there was a lot of explosions in the beginning, and I don't remember much about it, but I just went around killing zombies, and I only got past, not that far, not even to the middle of the game. I was just getting mauled to death by zombies. That's all I gotta say about Resident Evil 2, because that's all I really remember of it. I should play it again.
Alright, let's move on to the next category then. The first game I ever owned was A Bug's Life for the PS1. It was pretty fun. I was a lot better at it as a kid than I am now. It's a pretty damn fun game. It's a platformer kind of, and also an adventure game, and it uses real cutscenes from the movie, which, obviously would make streaming it kind of a hassle, because I'd have to cut those out. It's a good game, and I recommend playing it if you haven't.
Heard about it in top 10 videos, and I heard it was really good and underrated.
What was the first game you ever owned?
The first game I ever owned was Resident Evil 2, but another game I had was Mortal Kombat Armageddon. Still my favorite Mortal Kombat game.
Mine is Mortal Kombat Deception.
But I like the part where you can customize your own character. In Mortal Kombat Armageddon, I remember there was a story mode to it, and I got far in that. It was just fun, and all the death scenes I thought were really creative. Weren't there mini-games in it? I don't remember what mini-games there were, though.
Yes, there were. There was kart combat, and I think just kart combat. There might have been more. I know Deception had puzzle combat and chess combat, but I don't think those carried over.
I remember that not being as violent, and I thought it'd be better if it was more violent.
It was still pretty violent. It's like Mario Kart, but it does have gore in it. You can get crushed by stuff and still die.
More. I wish they still did those weird mini games in modern Mortal Kombat games. The chess game was also really fun for the Mortal Kombat. Because I had 3 Mortal Kombat games a long time ago, but the one I played first was Armageddon. Because it was a collector's thing that had just 3 Mortal Kombats.
I assume it was probably Deadly Alliance, Deception, and Armageddon. First console I owned was a PS1, which should be blatantly obvious with the first game being a PS1 game. I played that a lot, and it's very nostalgic for me, and that's why I'm very eager to, stream PS1 games like Ape Escape and stuff like that. Ape Escape was actually a game I first played on a demo disc on Dozermax PS1. Way back in the day. That's how I played a lot of games early on, was with demo discs, and I'm going to actually do a whole episode dedicated to those at some point. Escape was really fun. There was Rugrats, which I'll get more into in a minute. There was a lot of different games. The PS1 is probably my most nostalgic video game console, and it was the first one I owned. What was the first console you owned? I assume a PS2 or PS1?
Well, the first console I owned was a PS2, then I got a GameCube, then I got a PS3.
Yeah, the second console I owned was actually an NES. I actually downgraded. We got a PS2, and then I got an NES, then an Xbox.
But the first game I ever beat was Spider-Man PS1, but I had it on the PS2, because my PS2 could play PS1 games. But I remember beating that game. I first beat it on Kids Mode, then I beat it on Easy. But I never beat it on any other mode, so I should probably try that again on hard mode or normal mode.
That's a good game.
The ending, I remember scaring the crap out of me when I was younger.
Monster Octopus is a freaky fuck, dude. Especially the way he's just die!
He would squeal really loud.
Yeah, and then he'd start shouting die at you in this really distorted voice.
Freaked me out because I remember watching the cartoons of Spider-Man I thought that game was based off of, and they never once said die, they said destroy. Hearing Carnage, Dr. Octopus, Monster thing yelled "die" at me freaked me out a lot.
I think, didn't Carnage die in that too? And that's how Monster Octopus was made, is Carnage died and then the symbiote dripped down onto him?
I think that's what happened.
No, like, Carnage died and the symbiote fell off of Carnage onto Dr. Octopus. Onto the first game I beat. First game I beat was actually Rugrats on the PS1, Rugrats Search for Reptar. Super easy game, especially going back to it. Most of the games I beat as a kid, when I go back to, are super hard for me now. Not the case with Rugrats. Rugrats takes about 2 hours to beat, at the very most. It's a super easy game, but it's still a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a Rugrats game.
Yeah, to be fair, yeah, it is aimed at kids.
I'm not trying to say anything, but I mean, like, if a Rugrats game was really hard, then
you've obviously never played the sequel. Rugrats Studio Tour is a very hard game.
Why would they make a hard Rugrats game? Because that's more what I'm saying is, like, when I think of Rugrats, I think of that, like, lighthearted, silly cartoon. I think a hard game doesn't really fit with that.
But yeah, Rugrats Search for Reptar is easy as hell, and then Rugrats Studio Tour, which is the sequel, is a lot harder. First game I played online was Halo 3, and I played the shit out of it online. And Halo ODST was actually the reason I bought Live, but I'll be getting into that in a later episode as well. But Halo 3 is the first game I ever played online, and it wasn't on my Xbox, it was actually on Danny's. We got on and we played with some of his friends, and a couple of them later became my friends too online, but it was really fun, and it was a whole different experience, because before that I had only played split screen and stuff. To play online was a very, very different experience than anything I'd done before.
The first game I ever played online was Wizard 101. I remember what I have played of it, it was like really generic for a Wizard game, because like it really reminded me of like a typical kind of RPG game you would be playing. Magic the Gathering, really an RPG, but there's like Dungeons and Dragons. Like, it felt like if those kinds of games, somebody didn't like copy off of them, but actually tried their own to make something like that, but ripped off things like Pokemon and card games. Like, it just felt like a card game, like a Wizard card game. You probably can't relate to this, but I used to play. I used to go on websites where I could make my own games and play other people's games that they made. Did you ever do that?
Not really, but I did play like games people made, but I never made any. So what was the first kind of game you made? Let's go with that.
I don't want to talk about this.
Okay.
I'm gonna talk about it anyway, though. I got an account on Sploder, which I'm using now, but I want to make a new account because the same account I used to use when I first started, and there's a lot of interesting spelling errors. First game I ever made on it was called Mega Gump. It was supposed to be Mega Jump, but I spelled Mega Gump.
Like Forrest Gump meets Mega Man?
All it was just you jumping. It was basically just a really crappy platformer. You jumped on pipes, and you went. Like, they weren't pipes like in Mario where they just up and like this. Like, they were just like circle-shaped pipes, like the end of a pipe. Jumped on that, and then there'd be a floating pipe, and you jump on that, and it'd be another floating pipe, and you jump on that. And then it would lead to a portal that would lead to all the way to the end of the game, and then you'd have to go backwards to a certain door. Like, they have floating doors that you could jump into, but that's not like the kind of games I like to make now. I like to use they have two kinds of ones I only use now. Like, I don't use the kind I used back then, because I thought they were like really crappy. The ones I use now are the physics creator, which basically can just make you create anything that applies to physics, and you can like recreate Mario games. You can't entirely recreate it because they only have that like small amount of distance. But there's also the other one where you can make infinite amount of distance, and you can make almost infinite amount of levels. Like, I think it only goes up to like 1,000 levels. But that's also really fun. It's like a retro game maker is what that one's called. This is all on Sploder because they have several different kinds of games you can make. They also have RPG one, which is absolute crap. But you should check out Sploder. There's lots of fun games that people make on there, and you can make a lot of your own fun games. It's kind of crappy in a lot of ways, but it's just fun.
It's the good kind of crappy, like The Room. So now we've got Anthony joining us in here, and we're going to talk about his gaming first. So we'll go off with the first one that we already did, the first game we ever played. So what was the first game you ever played, Anthony? And tell us a little bit about it.
The very, very early games that I remember playing. This had to have been in 1999, I guess, because I used to play on my dad's computer. But some of the really, really early games were like games like the Toy Story. I don't know if they count as games, but like the read-along discs, whatever, the animated storybooks.
Oh, okay.
It went on from a Bugs Life action game, all of the Disney animated like activity center games. Then it went on to like be stuff like Spider-Man 2002, stuff like that. And then when I was 7 years old, the PC was my very first gaming console. When I was 7 years old, like my very first console, which is PlayStation 2, so I remember playing on it were ATV Off-Road Racing, The Incredibles, Shrek Super Slam, and Incredible Hulk.
Okay.
Destruction.
Okay. What was the first game you ever beat?
That I can remember? Probably the 1999 Tarzan PC game. I remember walking up to my mom after I beat it, like telling her I beat the game, and it was just a really happy experience.
Okay.
I believe I beat it back in like 2002 or 2001.
Okay. What was the first game you played online?
Well, the first game I remember playing online, well, I didn't really use it. I only used it once because there were a couple of dudes playing it on a PC library, but I believe the game was World of Warcraft. I'm going to account for it. I don't know if they ever used it. The first, actual, online game I remember playing was, with other users was probably Pop Tropica. I
am not familiar with that. What is that?
Like a very cartoony, game where you make your own character, and basically it's like a very it's like there's no sound at all. It's just click. You go left and right. You could jump. It's a lot of puzzle games. It might still be up actually.
Is it like a point and click game?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people would think because I was born in 1998 that I would have grown up with the PlayStation 1. The Nintendo 64, but the truth is, I wasn't alive, or I wasn't, by the time I was born, the cartridge era, I guess you could call it, were made on cartridges. They were, fading out, and they were made on discs. And so, I wanted to play PlayStation 1 at the time. I didn't even play the PlayStation 1 until, 2006, because my PlayStation 2 was actually backwards compatible. And I didn't even buy a memory card for the PlayStation 1 until years later. So I know, Angelo, you have a huge collection of original Xbox games before the 360.
Uh-huh.
And the reason why I played the original Xbox is because back in 2004 to 2006, my cousins actually had original Xbox, and I remember playing some of their games. I remember playing back then when my cousins were on a trip. They let us stay, and one of the games that they left was we rented some from Blockbuster, and one of the games was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Also, we had some of the Mortal Kombat, which I also played. So the original Xbox is quite sentimental to me, even though I was a PlayStation guy.
Okay.
One of these days, I might even get an original Xbox. Just the look of it and just the whole era of it is just so early 2000s. I love that era. And after that, I played the Xbox 360, which my cousins also had, and it just kind of went on from there. Even though we have this new generation with the Xbox One X coming out, I believe that's the next one, and of course, in a couple of years, I believe the PlayStation 5 is coming out. But I just miss the old back when game stores used to sell GameCube, PS2, and PS1. I mean, GameCube, Xbox, PlayStation 2. Those are the best memories for me.
Okay.
That's one of the next generations of gaming, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah. For sure.
But since that's my generation, of course, you could say, because you were born in, the early 90s,
mm-hmm.
You could say, the late 90s is your generation.
This has been Fugitive Red Eye, Anthony Bancury, and Rabid Waffles for Nostalgic Gaming Stories, and you guys have a great rest of the day.
Subscribe to Fugitive Red Eye.